We always start off like this.
I don't know why we don't talk about it beforehand. Go ahead, Nina.
I'm waiting for Isela to introduce. She's waiting for me. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Trauma Talks and Truths. We're so glad you're here. I'm Nina Vasquez, and
I'm Dr. Isela Garcia.
yay!
Hello, hello. Today is Tuesday,
Wednesday.
January 14th, and we are super excited to connect with all of you. What is our topic today? So, I was watching a movie. It's called Surprise by Oxford. And it is based on a true story of a woman, an American woman whose name is Carolyn, and she goes by Caro. I think it was Carolyn, but she goes by Caro. And I forget her, Caro Drake. And she, or was his name Drake? I don't remember. Anyway, I remember the premise to the story. It's one of those things that, like, I'm washing dishes and it's like playing in the background kind of thing. And it was a lovely, it's a romantic story of her, who she's super driven, was driven from the time she was very, very young. She had some traumatic events happen as a young child. And it was only, I believe, her and her mom, single mom, and she gets a scholarship to go to Europe, to England, to go to college, which is like her dream come true, right? And I think this is for her graduate work. And so she really wants to, she's into literature. That's her passion. And that's what I loved about it, because I used to be super, super passionate about reading literature and just kind of dissecting it out. And I also loved, I absolutely loved philosophy when I was in high school. And so I used to love talking about Plato and just Descartes, and just really just the philosophers just were intriguing to me, and their perspectives of things. And so that's what I loved about the movie. But there was a line in it when she meets this guy in college who she absolutely adores, but she's not willing to admit that she adores him. And so he's just there saying, "Hey, I just want a relationship." And she's like, "I ain't got time for a relationship. I ain't got time for nothing else but my, my education and my career." And I can resonate with that, because I was so driven for so long, just driven. And I loved what I did. I mean, I just had such passion for the work that I did. And sometimes I just did it and everything else fell by the wayside. And so her best friend says to her, after she breaks up with this guy, and who she's miserable about breaking up with him, and her best friend says to her, you're working yourself to the, basically to the death, right? You're just working and working and working. And her friend said, "I'm just busy. I've got to do these things." And her friend says something to her. The line I thought was just so good. She says, "I'm worried that you'll get everything you want and be perfectly miserable in the end." And that just was like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. How many of us have developed a story, whether that was told to us, whether we collected it from just, society, culture, family, that when we work hard and do all of the things, and I want to kind of talk about all these things,
Yeah.
and we get there and we're still perfectly miserable. What do you think about that, Nina?
Well, first off, that's like a really, I don't know, it's like a little bit of a gut wrenching question, right?
Yeah.
What do you do with that? What do you like? What if you get everything you want? I think we have to peel that apart, right? Because
Yeah.
what we want comes from conditioning, society, our family, our upbringing, our desire, right? And let's talk about a little bit, like, where does that come from? What we want? What's the difference between our ego, our wounded self wanting, versus like our highest self wanting?
Mm.
What was that? What's the difference for you?
That was a really hard question for me,
Mm.
because I do believe, even when I reflect now on my entire professional career, which, if this is the first time you've ever seen me, I've worked in early childhood education, more specifically working with kids who've experienced some level of trauma, but kind of like the extreme situations, families in crises, homelessness, domestic violence, addiction, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
There is a part of me, a strong part actually, that believes that I lived the life that I did as a child so that I could do that work.
Yeah.
So I really, and I remember the first time this happened for me, there was a kid that his name was Chris. And I remember everybody else just being so frustrated with him, didn't know, like, didn't really want to support him. And I remember sitting on the floor watching him. He was having a huge meltdown, and I was sitting with him, but I couldn't get too close to him because he was, could get very violent. And so I was sitting near him, and I remember thinking to myself, I know this pain.
Mm.
And I was like 19 time. And I knew then in that moment that I couldn't teach other people how to connect with this child, because how I knew my connection to him was my personal experience. So I really believe that that was all orchestrated for me. Like the shit I endured as a kid was intended for me to do the work that I did with children and families. So I
Mhm.
believe that wholeheartedly. The ego part in this story is that I was seeking approval, acceptance, love, because I didn't get that growing up. And so I got really, really good at what I did, and did get acceptance, approval, and love from others, which kind of just, fed the fuel, because I was really good at it and I loved it. And so I woke up every day wanting to do more of it.
Yeah.
But the ego drove me to work much, much harder. So I don't actually have any regrets for that, because I
Yeah.
didn't have my daughter, I didn't have her. I was in the field for 18 years before we had her. So
Mhm.
it's not like, my experience, like she got pushed off to the side because I was working so much. Like I didn't have a kid. And my
Yeah.
husband went off and did his own basketball thing. So
Yeah.
he was happy.
Yeah.
And so I just worked a lot.
Yeah. Was there any time in there where you were miserable and you got everything you wanted?
You know what? I'm telling you, my journey as I was working, was my healing time too, because I think that when I worked with kids and families, it was so much a part of it that I saw myself in them, and vice versa, that I was healing at the same time I was learning how to help others heal. Does that make sense? So I found I had diaries, journals that I had kept for many, many years. My
Oh,
teacher in high school, ninth grade, taught us how to journal. And that's when I started journaling, and I had to hide my journal. Like, I swear to you, I hid like
yeah.
I was smuggling drugs in my house.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
like, I learned how to hide my journal behind things so my mom could never find it, because I would have been dead. I would have been
Oh,
dead.
yeah.
And so I hid my journal, and I know how to hide shit. If you ever need help, I know how to
I
do
ever
it.
need help, I'll call you.
But I was reading through my old journals. I was in my 20s because I was cleaning and organizing, and I just flipped through some pages, and I was like, damn, I had some dark days.
Mhm.
I had some really dark days, because it's kind of like what you recently went through, Nina. It reminded me, just by reading my journals, it's like the 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 deep sadness, the just peeling back the onion. It's feeling the emotions that you would rather not feel, the wanting to just stay in bed all day long, and just, you function in the world, and then you just come home and you just fall the fuck apart.
Yeah.
Like, I had those experiences as I was doing the work that I was doing.
Yeah. I can really relate to that.
Yeah.
Right. And, as you're talking, I'm thinking about my journey. And we don't want to like demonize the ego, because the ego helped you become successful, like, in many ways, you know, whatever our definition of success is. I think for me, my wounded self had a lot of desires, and they were to be a mom,
Mm,
to be a wife, to have a home, to be safe, and to get a job that, paid well. And paid well to me was just enough to pay the bills. Because
mhm,
if I had all of those things, I would be safe. But another thing that my wounded self wanted was to be loved and accepted and wanted.
mhm,
So that led me to misery, because just like with make enough to get by, I accepted enough to get by in relationship as well. So I settled. I didn't have a high standard for myself.
mhm,
And I did things as a woman to receive love that I wouldn't do today,
mhm,
because I have a little bit higher standard. And so I got all those things. I became a mom. I wrote all this down. I became a mom. I was a wife. I had a house. I had a job. I was a supervisor, and I was miserable. And most weekends I was in my bed, depressed. And most nights I was drinking vodka lemonade, sometimes with the little blueberries in there, with a simply lemonade every time. And I was checked out. And every single night I watched General Hospital for all 12 years that my daughter was there with me. Every night I checked out of my life, because I was just hustling during the day at work, and I just couldn't take any more stress. And so I got all the things, but I wasn't happy, because I wasn't really in alignment with my soul's calling, my soul's whispers. I was ignoring the truth of who I was, right?
mhm.
What
I think you were in survival.
I was in survival, definitely, definitely in survival. But I got everything I wanted,
Mhm,
right? And then when I began to wake up, I had to have a rock bottom moment. I am one of those humans that Isela says like she never wants to be, where you have to like get knocked upside your head. No, I have to learn the freaking hard way.
mhm,
I am that one, right? Like I have to get knocked upside my head. So I had to have like a rock bottom to wake up. And when I started to wake up, I realized, I used to be so attached to all the things. I wanted to be like the best chef, the best baker, the best. So I could like please people, right?
mhm,
So like I had to have like all the Food Network stuff in my house, and I got rid of everything. And I started just like realizing that things didn't make me happy anymore, right?
mhm,
And so then I went on this, whole long journey of realizing what did bring me peace and happiness. And it was not anything outside of me.
mhm. Yeah, I think this is the story we've been fed, you
Mhm,
know?
mhm,
And I think there are lots of sides to the story. As I listen to you talk about your journey into your own awareness, I think I've shared this story before, but my ultimate goal, because I had established goals when I was 18 years old, and my last one was to get a doctorate. And I was so driven to accomplish every single thing on that list. I was so freaking driven. And in truth, it was in spite of, like, really what I was doing was a big fuck you to my mom. That's what I was
mhm,
doing. It's like I did this without your help, without your money, without your anything. So I was doing it on that end, you know, like that was the driving force for me. At the same time, getting, the accolades and the, wow, you're really good at this
mhm,
from everyone else. And when I got my doctorate, It was like the ultimate. And that was huge. Like it took me 7 years because I was running a crisis intervention program. I took time off at times because we were going through some transitions. And so I had to push out my doctoral process for 7 years. And that last year, I had a newborn and I was writing a dissertation as I was nursing. I mean, it was just an awful, awful experience to do those, have this new baby and be in this program. And I remember in the end going, once I finish, once I get to that end, when you start to see the light at the end of that tunnel, you start to go, okay, all things are it's like this happiness is just going to explode because you finally accomplished everything that you put yourself out to. And I was like 34, 5. And to be that age and accomplish everything that you set out. And like, nothing happened the next day. Got my doctorate, and then you get like hooded, like they put there's a whole ceremony that you go through. And then life continued to happen.
Yeah. Then you're still like raising Dia and
Gia, which changed my life because, it was like 35 years of focus on the work. And now I've got a little person I have to consider. My husband and I were together 18 years before we had her. So we had already established an entire relationship in terms of our patterns. And, my husband is neurodivergent. And so he was stuck in his patterns. So when I had this baby and was like, hello, like, got a baby here. Like, you gotta your schedule has to change. You can't go play basketball for 4 hours, a day.
Yes.
And that just messed him up because he's like, I don't know what to do with this. And so everything shifted when we had her. And at the same time, there I was sitting going, but I accomplished all my goals.
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't this be easy now?
Mm. Yeah, let's talk about goals, right? Because
that's another word for me.
Yeah.
Goals. Okay, let's go, Nina.
I'm not a fan of the word goals anymore, but what came to me while you're talking is we're talking about like getting everything you want and then feeling miserable. But let's talk about when you're not getting what you think you want and or think you should have, or think you should be, where you think you should be, where all these conditionings where we think we should be. There's so much suffering in that.
Yes.
Right? Like how many times, like how many women are in they're like 26 and they're like, oh my gosh, I should be married and have children by now. And I should have a partner and there's so much pain. And then bring on the 40s. There's women who are 40 and single like me. They're like, I shouldn't be single. And, like all these expectations on ourselves. I should have a degree. What's coming up for you about that? I could go on and on.
This is a hard one because you're right. I mean, how many people do I know? I am married. I've been with my husband for a really long time, but I am surrounded by a lot of single women who have this idea in their mind, like I'm supposed to be married right now. Like I want to be with somebody. I want to spend my life with a partner. And I just wonder if we didn't have all of this social conditioning of what we're supposed to be or how things should be, how would we live our lives?
Yeah.
What would we choose? Like, what would we really, really choose? Because so much in terms of goals or the things that we aspire to be or aspire to have are all external ideas.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I will maybe share a little bit and maybe a little vulnerably with you and people listening and watching. For you, those of you who are watching. I'm 45 years old. I've been single for goodness since 2016. I mean, dated once or twice in there, but nothing really serious. And I've lived on my own, in my own apartment for most of that time. But this past year, I started to connect with myself and listen to myself more. And while I have been single, there's a difference between being single and really connecting with yourself. And I would say of all those years, it just started to happen for me this past year, that I was like really connecting with my desires, what I really wanted, because I had the shoulds as well. I should have my own place. I should be in a relationship. And I started to listen to myself, and I have a roommate now. I had a desire for more community, and I didn't want to just get into any relationship just to not be by myself. And I didn't want to live by myself anymore. And I wanted to like have humans around. And now I have pets too, right? And so I did that, but I had a lot of what I call like ego thoughts about that, right? Like, what does that mean about me? And being this age and all those things I had to overcome, the conditioning, the conditioning that I had to take that step. And another thing that I'm sitting with right now this month is removing. I have been on the apps, dating apps, like all this time, and I very rarely go on a date. But it takes my mind space, because I'm thinking I should be dating and I should find this guy. And what I realize is, and what I'm being asked to do, is to really connect with myself, not the ego self, but like with myself, who is an aspect of God, who is source, who myself, so I can find out what that really is outside of conditioning. So I don't know if that helped anybody, but it felt like I needed to share that, because I think there's a lot of suffering when it comes to where we think we should be and where we're not. And we don't listen to ourself. What do you call it? The big I, I think you call it something else.
It's the higher, well, it's the big S.
The
It's
big
the I am. It's the deeper knowing of who we are.
Yeah.
You know, as you're talking, I think there is a big difference. And you know, when I say this is just my awareness of people, because like I said, I do have a husband, you know, so I'm not in your shoes, but
Yeah.
I think that there is a difference between wanting someone in your life because you think somehow that's going to fulfill you and complete you, right? Like that's going to make you happier, more content, more fulfilled. And I think that, and this theoretically is really easy to say, but to really drop into this is a very different experience. I think what you're doing right now is coming to the state of awareness of who you truly are.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing about this, and I believe this not just about relationships, but of all things. When we don't know who we truly are, if we're not in that deeper level of awareness where we can connect to our inner wisdom, what happens is we attract the things that are going to help us delve deeper. And oftentimes we just perceive ourselves as being a victim of the situation. So what I mean by that is the healing that we have left to do, okay, whatever's left unhealed, you will attract people who will trigger that within you. And that's simply a gift from the universe. That's like, you know, you go out on a date and all of a sudden you're like, I thought I was doing pretty good here. And then he says this, and I'm back in the situation where I thought I had already healed. Well, that is a gift from the universe to go, oh, yeah, you thought you had healed that.
Yeah. And Isela didn't just make that up. She like literally told you a situation that I shared with her.
I don't even remember you sharing that with me, Nina. I think that's the story of many, many women, or many people, not just women, because this happens to men too. I think we attract opportunities, and that really gives us a chance to go deeper into our own healing journey.
Yeah.
And that's why you get rid of this guy or this person, and then like you attract somebody else and you're like, hey, I'm vibing, this is good. And then the deeper and closer you get, you attracted something very similar
Yeah.
because you're not done with that healing part within you just yet.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So when you have an activation or a trigger, or, just thank the universe.
Mhm.
Which
Yeah,
I just
well,
walked through a really challenging, like last week, really challenging, emotional state and activation in my body. And, it's hard to in the moment give thanks for it, but you can afterwards, right?
yeah.
Especially if you can see yourself, the growth in your capacity to walk yourself through those things. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I kind of got I don't know. Did we get off track, or does that feel like it's still on track what we're talking about? I don't know.
Well, I think this notion of you get what you want and still be perfectly miserable, I can't tell you how many people, when we're just talking just simply about relationships,
Yeah.
where people go, once I get the person, then I will feel more content, more whole, more all of these things. And I have to tell you that that's not going to do it. That's actually going to bring up that whatever's unsettled and unhealed.
Yeah.
It's true also, you get the car, you get the house, you get the degrees, you get the things that the purse. Yeah. I'm so not I don't know shit about labels or purses or shoes. I just get what's comfortable. But seriously. So I think all of these ideas of what, we're aiming for, I would ask why? Like what do you think that will bring for you? And in truth, it will for a minute feel good. And then whatever is left in terms of your own healing is going to continue to show up for you.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a good question. Is like when you want something, ask yourself, what do you want to feel? Right.
Mhm.
And this is with all goals, right? What do you want to feel if you reach that weight loss goal, or if you get that handbag you want, or if you get the job you think you want? What are you trying to feel? What is it what is the feeling? Because we don't actually have to wait for the thing. Because
Mhm.
I people get the thing and feel miserable literally because our thoughts create our feelings, and our emotions come from other places as well. But
Right.
it's you could get there and be like, it's not enough, still feel miserable.
Well, it won't be enough. It won't be enough if you don't really explore the drive be underneath it, and what I call the undercurrent. So
Mhm.
what is it that you're aiming for? What is it that you're trying to fulfill? What is it? Because you'll get there and then you'll move on to the next thing because it won't be enough. What
Yeah,
is it? Is it self-worth? What is it?
most
Is it
likely.
love?
Mhm. Acceptance.
What is it?
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's the big question. All right. So we've got hi, Suzanne. We've got a comment from Anessa. I've been around people most of my life and still finding myself feeling alone, surrounded by the wrong people, unfortunately. So my question to you, Anessa, is when we look around, okay, because I think this happens to a lot of us, when we look around and we are drawing into our realm, right, our experience of life, people who aren't either supportive of us, responsive to our needs, who might ignore us. This may not be your situation. I'm just rattling off my experience with other people.
Yeah.
So, they're just not ones to lift you. They're ones to sometimes kind of dismiss or even suppress what it is you are wanting, experiencing. My question is always, what could be truly happening? What could truly be happening? Okay. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper than that. So that's kind of like that level one. What's really going on here? Okay. So the question then becomes, what are you deserving of in terms of your relationships with others, how you are treated? What are you deserving of? And so once we understand and believe what we're deserving of, then we can move into the state of believing that in our actions and behaviors. And for me, that really became a process of establishing boundaries and clear expectations of others. I And I say this to my daughter who's 16, I believe we teach people how to treat us. So if you don't like how somebody is treating you, you get to say, this is unacceptable to me. The challenge with that is, number one, that might mean that that relationship is an end of a chapter in your life. It might also mean that it causes waves. It causes, especially if this is family, right? That can make it very, very difficult. But once we come to the place of what am I deserving of, and I'm going to love myself enough to establish these boundaries so that people understand what's acceptable to me and what is unacceptable to me, you will start to see that the people that surround you will start to shift. And the reason is because you're not going to play that anymore.
No.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about that, Nina?
I think that was very, very beautifully said. And the word tolerating came to me. Like, what are you tolerating and why on the outside? And, I would say I am tapping into also right now that our life is our insides pushed out a little bit. And if you can ask yourself, what am I deserving of? And then, like Isela said, then look at like, what am I tolerating inside
Mm-hmm.
that's reflecting on the outside of my life.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. Because we attract to us what's going on the inside.
Yep.
Right. So it's a little bit like little meta, little like hard to grasp that concept. But if you can say, okay, I'm tolerating somebody who treats me like this, who doesn't honor my boundaries, right? Okay, where am I not honoring my boundaries?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. What's happening on your outside is a mirror of what's going on the inside. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that might take a little bit, Onessa, a little bit of journaling and, or maybe not even journaling if you're not a journaler, but like really quiet contemplation of like, what am I tolerating? And then turn that mirror around. So you can look at your internal world. Of course, Isel and I can, help you a little bit with that, but it gets a little deep. We have to ask ourselves the hard questions. Mm-hmm. For years, 2 decades, I tolerated a lot of things in my life because I had low standards for myself because I didn't think I was worthy of more. Mm-hmm. Right. So if you're tolerating things in your life, you don't believe you don't have an identity that you're deserving of more. So you got to first start with that identity.
The other thing too, Nina, you also were seeking acceptance, love, and approval through being a caregiver and like taking care of everybody's needs before your own.
Yeah.
And see, that's where you and I are different. I think that's why we work so well together, because we do have that like balance and perspectives. Yeah. So for you, it was, and I think this is a lot of women and some men, but a lot of women who are like, I'm going to take care of everybody because that's my role. But really, we're getting a lot from that experience.
We are getting our, the love accepted that we're not giving to ourselves, right? We're getting our needs met, but also we're getting safety because that's our version of safety. Right. So if you can create safety in your body, that's why we have to bring the mind, body, and spirit, right, together. If you can create safety in your body, then you can start saying, oh, I actually don't need that person to fill me up.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that perspective is really important, because I'm kind of the other extreme. Like for me to establish boundaries with people was not as difficult as it is. I think for people who that's kind of how you identified yourself as a caregiver or nurturer or somebody who people could rely on. It's not that I'm not those things, but I don't do it in the same way that other people do. Does that make sense? I'm much more like, well, if you don't like it, then go find somebody else who'll do it for you.
Yeah, and I think you can identify if you are leaning toward Nina's pattern or not. It's like, I'll give you this crazy example. There was a moment where I was dating and I needed to tell a guy that like we're not a good match. I was so freaking deathly afraid in my body. So afraid in my body, so anxious to tell this person who I didn't know that well, who'd only seen one time, that like we're not a match. The amount of anxiety and fear I had in my body to tell this person this my truth. This is the people pleasing pattern. This is the I'm not going to be safe. This is the Isela would have probably did it like 5 hours before me, and it took me all day long to regulate my nervous system to be able to say the truth to someone. And if you find yourself struggling with that, then we've got a pattern of not being able to speak our truth, right? Because we're trying to protect somebody else's feelings, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think even just knowing your truth is a first step for some. Yeah, you're right. I would have we would have been out together and I would have been like, I don't think we're a match. But,
right.
It was good hanging out with you.
Yes. Right.
Number for the place you were talking about?
Right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So Suzanne says, I can so very relate to Nina. I think a lot of women can. For years, we look after others, nurture ourselves by gratitude we get from others rather than filling our own cup up. Yeah. Yep.
The harsh part of that, Suzanne, is like, I always, looking back now, I always felt out of alignment, would hear I didn't know it was my soul's whisper, but like something didn't feel right. And the more I step out of those patterns, because obviously those are trauma responses, right? The more I heal, the more I step out of that pattern, I feel so much more inner peace, right? So I could go on and on, because what creates depression? What creates that? Lack of inner peace, right? And many other things. But so you start to feel like, oh, actually, I am ignoring the whispers of my soul. So I feel terrible, right? I'm ignoring myself, right? Yeah. So
going back to the quote, I'm worried that you'll get everything you want and be perfectly miserable in the end. So if I had any advice to give to young people today, like I say to my daughter, we never talk about goals. Her school's like, what are you going to do in 5 years? And what are you going to, she's like, I'm cool.
I love that.
Because I really believe that when we listen to our intuitive guidance, when we get to this place of just, what do I find passion in? What do I love to do? Where, and trusting that the universe conspires for you. I'm telling you, things just sort of happen. It's like magic. Yeah. It's magic. And so I think we have to, and it's not that we don't have an intention. There is an intention, but there's also so much trust in self and in the universe.
Yeah.
Source. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think there's less about getting, having these ideas of what will make us whole.
Yeah. Because we're already.
Yes. Before we end today, I want to let folks know that I am doing a 52-week challenge inside of my Facebook group. My group is called I Am Loved, the Love Being Spiritual Community. And this book is available. It's a journal, actually. It's available on Amazon. This is my proof copy, but basically it's just a fillable space. And there's a prompt every week that I will drop in the group. And we're just going to see where this goes. We'll have dialogue. We might do some video connection about this, maybe just dropping in comments some weeks. But the intention is really to help you go within. And within the community, I think there's a lot of support that can happen that makes this process less scary, and where you don't feel lonely in the journey of kind of unearthing who you truly are.
I'm so excited for that book. Congratulations, Isela.
Thank you. It's a journal. It's a journal. It's like it's not a book, people. It's a journal. I'm working on my books.
Don't let her downplay this journal. I've seen the inner workings of this journal, and it's pretty amazing. So
it's a journal.
Yeah.
Journal
can change your life.
I've been working on my books for years. I've got 7 books that I've written that are fiction books. When that launches, now that's a celebration. Like, that's a huge, this is something I literally put this together in a day. So I'm like,
So, I am one of these coaches that like really encourages people to celebrate themselves. So I'll just celebrate you anyways.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's nice to see this like in a book form. It's very cool to see this this way. And I'm hoping that the process will help people, because that's the whole reason why I wrote this, actually, was it's the process that helps us. It's not just the journal prompts. It's when something shows up for us, going through the series of questions that we can ask ourselves to delve deeper and then go, okay, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
Like, where do I take this now that I know about myself, about myself? Because I think there's so much unconscious bias that we're unaware of, or unconscious beliefs that we are completely unaware of. So this helps us delve deeper. And then we go, okay, where do I go from here?
Yeah. And I think it's a great resource. And, Isela is really great at like, not, how do I explain it? Like, not letting the ego, I don't know what I'm trying to say. All I'm saying is it's a great resource. And,
Thank you.
When you actually do the thing, it's never the book that's on the shelf.
Right.
It's the thing you do with it. Right.
That's the truth.
So we can buy a journal and leave it sitting on the bookshelf, but it's when you actually take action and when you go within, you do the healing work that helps you emerge, right, as your true self. So
yeah, I think that's actually the point I'm trying to make, that there's nothing in here that's going to be like, oh my God, this is so inspirational. It's a process. It's a process, but you have to work the process. I mean, if you want to buy it and put it on a shelf, then that's great. I mean, that's fine, but this is really for you more than it is for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When my other books come out, that's more for me.
And me too, because I'm reading it. So good.
All right, everyone. Have a fabulous rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow.
Bye, guys.